Good morning. Good morning. The subcommittee will come to order. I ask unanimous consent that the chair be authorized to declare a recess at any time without objection, so ordered. Today we will hear from our witnesses on U.S. Special Operations Forces and Command and their challenges and resource priorities for fiscal year 2026. Over the past several years, our nation has confronted an evolving landscape of great power competition. Our special operators have adapted to meet the challenges posed by our adversaries while continuing to combat the continuous and evolving threats posed by violent extremist organizations, military proxies, and non-state actors. Despite the long wars in Afghanistan and Iraq coming to close, the demands on special operations have actually increased, and they continue to rise. Special operations continue to be our greatest hedge against strategic distraction as they singularly respond to crisis around the world and neutralize terrorist networks with the intent and means to attack our homeland. The complexity of these no-fail missions continues to rise as the battlefield becomes increasingly contested and denied by the proliferation of peer adversary capabilities and malign influence. We similarly rely on our special operations forces to impose cost on adversaries critical to reestablishing deterrence and providing the nation with a position of advantage should deterrence fail. We ask a lot of our special operations forces, and demands on them will continue to grow every day. It is critical that we provide you with the resources that you need, and we intend to do that. We look forward to hearing how Congress can best support SOCOM so that you can continue to provide the high return on investment the nation requires while simultaneously modernizing for the challenges of the future. Our witnesses today are leaders in the special operations community. I want to welcome Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense Colby Jenkins, performing the duties of Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations and Low-Intensity Conflict. Thank you, sir. And General Bryan Fenton, U.S. Army Commander of U.S. Special Operations Command. Thank you, sir. In the interest of time, I ask that the witnesses keep their opening remarks to 5 minutes or less so that we have sufficient time for questions and answers. With that, let me thank our witnesses for appearing again, and I now recognize Ranking Member Crow for any opening remarks that you have.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate your leadership in this and the other members as well. Mr. Jenkins, General Fenton, thank you as well for your leadership. As the Chairman mentioned, we're in an era of unprecedented threats and evolution in the battlefield. You all continue to lead the men and women that are on the tip of the spear, so to speak, in that evolution. This subcommittee is a partner in that effort. There's no gamesmanship, there's no gotcha in this subcommittee, which makes it unique in Congress at this time. We are here as your partner. We, of course, have an important oversight role, which we will always fulfill and ask hard questions and press when necessary. But more than anything else, we just want to get the answers to how we can better support you, what resources are needed, so that the men and women who are doing incredible things on our behalf around the world, very dangerous things, oftentimes giving their lives to protect all of us, have the best training, the best equipment, the best modernization. That is our simple goal here, and it's a goal that I know that we share deeply, and you have a commitment to that goal. So with that, I won't take any more time. We can jump right into it. I yield back.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll now hear from our witnesses, and then we'll move into question and answer session. We have a 9 a.m. hard stop so that we can, in this open portion, so that we can get to the closed portion immediately afterwards. We will be reconvening in Rayburn 2337 immediately after this open session for the classified session. Mr. Jenkins, we'll go ahead and begin with you.
Good morning, Chairman Jackson, Ranking Member Crow, and other distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on the global posture of our nation's Special Operations Forces, or SOF. I'm honored to testify alongside General Fenton. We are joined here today by two extraordinary Americans who I would like to take a moment to recognize. Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense and Director of the Special Operations Secretariat, Dr. Sandra Hobson, seated behind me, and SOLIC Senior Enlisted Advisor, Command Master Chief Brad Rhinelander, also seated behind me. These dedicated servant leaders bring expertise and insights that have been invaluable as we advocate within the Department of Defense on behalf of our SOF members and their families. As a combat veteran Green Beret myself, the opportunity to work with these incredible teammates and represent our SOF enterprise is proud, profoundly humbling, and special. Today's global security environment has become increasingly complex as AI and other technological advancements rapidly transform the character of warfare. Threats from state and non-state actors continue to converge. Our global competitors actively seek to undermine the United States and our allies. Terrorist and transnational criminal networks continue to pose a serious threat to the homeland. In these turbulent times, my office, the Office of Special Operations Low Intensity Conflict, or SOLIC, and the U.S. Special Operations Command remain at the forefront of our nation's strategic priorities. Representing less than 2% of the defense budget, our Special Operations Forces provide unique, outsized effects, adding exceptional value to the nation. Tasked with the most challenging and dangerous missions, SOF remain the world's most lethal, adaptable, and capable force. Our priorities for the SOF enterprise are squarely nested within Secretary Hegseth's priorities for the Joint Force: defend the homeland, strengthen deterrence, and increase burden sharing with allies and partners. Our elite warriors deter our adversaries by creating strategic asymmetric advantages and maintaining irregular warfare superiority. Leveraging our close relationships with foreign partners in critical regions, SOF are uniquely positioned to identify and counter our adversaries' malign and coercive activities. Whether in the Indo-Pacific, Europe, the Middle East, Africa, Western Hemisphere, or near our own southern border, these low-cost, small-footprint efforts promote stability, empower partners and allies, and lead efforts against China, terrorists, drug traffickers, and other threats. Even with the global increase in demand, our Special Operations Forces face personnel cuts and resource constraints. In fact, armed conflict and regional instability have driven a 200% increase in our crisis response mission over the past 3 years, while at the same time, operational and logistics costs for crisis response have increased 260%. We must ensure SOF's readiness while balancing operational demands and optimizing available resources. We must also promote accountability through rigorous analytics and data-driven decision-making. Congress wisely established civilian oversight of special operations to ensure that SOF remains strategically aligned, ethically grounded, and accountable. My office provides that policy direction, resource advocacy, and oversight needed to ensure that SOF's initiatives and efforts stay focused on warfighter needs and national objectives without mission creep or undue strain on the force. This oversight is not bureaucratic. In fact, it is essential to effective warfighting. Our nation's security depends on a strong, agile, modernized, and accountable SOF enterprise. With your support, we will continue ensuring that SOF is ready to deter, fight, and win anytime, anywhere. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify. I invite you to visit the SOF community around the globe and to meet our service members and their families, and to see firsthand the capabilities that we bring in the defense of our nation. Your continued support is critical. I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. General Fenton, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Jackson, Ranking Member Crow, distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. This month marks 38 years since the creation of Special Operations Command. We are thankful for Congress's incredible foresight in creating us and steadfast support ever since. Joined today by Command Sergeant Major Shane Shorter. Shane exemplifies the unmatched caliber of our non-commissioned officer corps. If you look at the hardest problems facing our nation, the darkest corners of this earth, you'll find our Special Operations non-commissioned officers solving them. Our NCOs exemplify the precision and lethality of your Special Operations teams and demonstrate our competitive and comparative advantage. They are the reason we're envied by militaries around the globe. It's an honor of a lifetime for Shane and me to represent the uniformed and civilian members of your Special Operations Command and the global SOF warriors from 28 nations, along with interagency partners stationed at our SOCOM headquarters in Tampa. I'm also honored today to testify along Secretary Jenkins from ASD SOLIC. We rely on SOLIC's partnership, support, and advocacy to ensure your Special Operations warriors and their families who serve right alongside them continue to thrive and win. We're in an era of serious national security challenges: the border, communist China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, terrorist organizations, all pose significant threats in isolation. However, we are increasingly seeing these threats converge across the globe. Meanwhile, the character of war is changing faster than we've ever seen. The innovation cycle now turns in days and weeks, not months and years. Our adversaries use $10,000 one-way drones that we shoot down with $2 million missiles. That cost-benefit curve is upside down. To summarize, this is the most complex, asymmetric, and hybrid threat security environment I've seen in 38 years of service. Contending with these challenges demands more from your Special Operations Forces. That requires tough choices, forcing trade-offs as we strike to balance an increase in operations, readiness, and the need for modernization. Your elite SOCOM team provides an outsized return on any investment. However, with only 3% of the DoD forces and less than 2% of DoD's budget, we are now playing a zero-sum game. Yet I'd submit your Special Operations Forces are tailor-made for this era, rapidly responding to crisis, disrupting terrorist organizations, and asymmetrically deterring our adversaries. Employed expressly at the direction of the President and the Secretary of Defense, SOCOM's crisis response mission is the nation's most lethal and surgical tool to eliminate threats to the homeland, rescue American citizens, and protect our diplomats, all at a moment's notice. In the past 3.5 years, the frequency of these presidentially directed missions significantly increased by 200%. Yet for this sacred obligation, we will accept no risk in today's crisis response mission. Some may think we're done fighting terror. I'd submit terror is not done with us. SOCOM's mission to degrade terrorist groups starts at our border, spans the globe. In recent months, your special operations teams eliminated over 500 terrorists who had the intent and capability to strike at our homeland. Alongside our global special operations partners, we've captured over 600. Aligned with the department's priorities, deterrence has long been a part of SOCOM's DNA. We are America's irregular warfare experts. We deter war by altering our adversaries' decisions below the threshold of conflict in the gray zone, and we stand ready to prevail if deterrence fails. As combatant commands seek to strengthen deterrence, requests for SOCOM capabilities have increased by more than 35% in the last 2 years alone. Against that backdrop, we continue to grapple with years of flat budgets, 14% decrease in buying power, significant personnel reductions, and the requirement to evolve our technology and authorities. All this forces trade-offs, tough choices that challenge current missions and puts modernization at risk. Yet, your SOCOM remains the world's premier special operations force, and I pledge to always provide the nation with the best special operations capability for the fiscal and personnel resources we receive. We will never compromise on standards and lethality. We are grateful for this subcommittee's work on novel approaches to soft funding and authorities, and I look forward to taking your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, General. We'll start with questions now, and I'll start by recognizing myself. General Fenton, we had our office call about 3 weeks ago, and you mentioned the challenges of supporting all the requests of SOF that you're getting from the geographic combatant commands. In your statement, you mentioned a 35% increase from 2023 to 2025. Can you expand a little bit for the benefit of the folks here watching this hearing? Can you tell us a little bit, give us a better sense of what that number is and how many times you've had to deny request and the reason that you have to do so?
Representative, I'll start by saying the COCOM demand for Special Operations Forces is up, and I'm sure you've heard that from the combatant commanders that come before you. I think for a number of reasons in deterrence. First, they know that the highest value proposition in some sense that SOF provides is prior to conflict. The things we do to prevent, building relationships, developing access basing and overflight, providing indications and warnings, along with everything we're doing to prepare in the event that worst day comes. Closing kill webs or kill chains or sensor systems, giving COCOM commanders options and opportunities they wouldn't otherwise have, and presenting a whole bunch of dilemmas and challenges to an adversary they wouldn't have. I think that's why we see the demand going up, and that comes in the form of asking for special forces teams, Marine Raider teams, NSW teams, command and control elements, AVSOC, and that's that 35% increase. To your point on where we've had to say no, I'll give you a number. Last December, in one of the global force management tanks, I had to say no 41 times to requests just like that. It hurt my heart. It's a high compliment that this SOF team is that value proposition to the entire department. We couldn't do it. And we couldn't do it, my sense, and I'll wind this down for you, is two reasons. There's certainly a capability and capacity piece against the great humans that do that work. And as you know, we've been reduced in the past a couple years by up to 5,000. But there's also now a fiscal constraint that's pulling at us based on an increasingly decreasing top line, that now comes into play. So at times, even if I could put the person out there, fiscally, the cost is prohibitive. And I'll pause there, Representative.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. We're going to do our best to fix that. Secretary Jenkins, SOCOM's budget has been relatively flat for the past decade. In your combined written statement, it is less than 2% of the budget and one of the few DoD organizations that has not seen an increase, although overall budget has increased significantly. How are you using your service-like secretary position to campaign for a higher budget for SOCOM, and how much do you think SOCOM needs?
Well, thank you, Chairman. We love those kind of questions, so thank you very much. In my service-like capacity, it is very much my responsibility and role to campaign, to keep those sharp elbows out so that I can advocate on behalf of our SOF enterprise. And just last week, we had the opportunity to brief the new Deputy Secretary of Defense and had a very warm reception in terms of examining what we would have to propose for 8% cuts, because every organization's being asked to propose those. And we found a good reception in terms of we want to keep you whole the best that we can. So it's our responsibility to make sure that we interact with our service counterparts. That's where we see, maybe danger is a strong word, but that's when they consider cuts, there are so many downstream effects to us that aren't often taken into account when the Army considers a cut, or the Navy, or so forth. So that's where we really hedge and defend our budget, so that we make sure when services are proposing other cuts, we can step in early or before and make sure that we guard our equities as well. So it's an ongoing campaign. We have a regular warfare out against our adversaries, and we also run similar regular warfare within a department to protect our equities.
Do you have any idea what that number looks like?
I don't know the top number just yet. It hasn't been identified. I'd have to leave that to the deputy and the comptroller as well, but I know that those are actively being considered right now.
Okay, thank you. My time is essentially up here, so I'm going to yield and recognize Ranking Member Crow.
Thank you, Chairman. Just picking up on that question stream, if you were forced to make 8% cuts, what would that look like? Just kind of paint a picture here.
Well, I'm not a doctor, but if I was, it would be cutting into bone. We are already lean and efficient, and we try to be good stewards of everything, every penny that we gratefully receive. But we have to be conscious of making sure it's always a good exercise to examine our resources and make sure that we're posturing for the future war and not fighting the last war.
There's no fat in SOCOM.
There's no fat,
Sir. You're lean and mean as you're supposed to be.
Yes.
So cutting into that is cutting into valuable resources and support.
Correct, cutting right into the bone for sure. And so we're doing our best to avoid that at all costs.
All right. General Fenton, we've had a number of conversations about acquisition and rapid fielding capability, so I wanted to talk about that publicly on the record a little bit. Talk to me about the importance of giving you new authorities that would allow you to go commercial, to just rapidly speed up the acquisition process so we could field new technologies.
Representative, I think thank you for having those discussions with us. It's certainly planted a lot of ideas in our team, and I hope did the same with yours. I'd start by saying, I think when I talk about modernization, some folks and transformation, lots of times folks think technology only. Of course, as SOCOM with people is the #1 priority. We start there, then we talk about technology, but we also add authorities in there. And I think on this piece, this is a modernization that is, I think, long overdue. The reason I give it in that way, I think about it, our current acquisition procurement system, and I mean no harm to everybody that's been a part of that, but I would just offer it's outdated. It's glacial. I think it works in years and decades, and probably rightly so for some of the highest ticket items, aircraft carrier, bomber, or fighter. But what we're seeing through the lens of Ukraine needs to be an acquisition site and procurement system that is hyperspeed, supersonic, because over there, we're watching the changes in minutes, hours, and days, and that is a very stark contrast. Different, I came in 1987, I was using Vietnam-era gear because that was a generational acquisition procurement process. That would be unacceptable today. So I think starting with that and then acknowledging it's probably a reflection of requirements, processes that need to be modified, updated, and those authorities changed. If I could say it so bluntly, take more people out of that system. Get less hands on the requirements process, go from operator to commander, and then acquisition.
In one way would be to allow COCOMs and others directly downrange
Yes, sir.
performing the mission to
Yep.
to create those requirements.
That's right. And then buckets of money, I think that's a challenge. There's a lot, I would call them handcuffs against the striated O&M, RDT&E, and procurement pots. I think there's a way to take a lot of that off, compress the multiple lines to just a couple, and really modernize there. And then I think lastly, as I think about the requirements process, certainly the buckets of time. Give us an opportunity to think through multi-year processes. So 2 years might seem multi-year, I think to all of us. Multi-year probably needs to be 5 to 10 years, so we can move at the speed and evolution of what we're seeing out on the battlefield.
Okay. Last piece, my own combat experience underscored for me the importance of protecting civilians, doing everything possible to minimize civilian casualties, because not only is that efficient, less use of ammunition, more focus on the adversary, less distraction, but it's actually, there's a moral imperative to make sure that we're leading with our values, we're fighting with our values. We created a couple of years ago on a bipartisan basis, the Armed Services Committee that created the Civilian Protection Center of Excellence. Could you speak very briefly in your own experiences to the importance of making sure that civilians are protected in the conduct of our missions and what that means for you as an operator?
Representative, I think you laid it out pretty clearly. I think it's a strategic obligation. You called it a moral obligation to accomplish the mission, and especially when we're talking about high-end kinetics of eliminating the threat, yet also making sure that we protect non-combatants, civilians, vulnerable population, because that sends a very different message that we are the United States of America, will do the mission, get the bad guys, so to speak, but protect those around it. And I think that differentiates us from the adversaries we're watching in motion right now. I think the other piece it sends is a message to the civilian population in that nation that we are absolutely there to do the missions against bad actors or bad things, but in many, many ways to be the United States of America that they know, to be, and in a sense, sending a diplomatic message that, we're here to reassure or assure. And I think you can do that in the way that certainly SOCOM approaches kinetic operations.
Thank you to you both. I'm out of time. I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Scott, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and gentlemen, thank you for being here. I'm going to have to slip to a Rules Committee meeting as soon as I ask the questions, but I want to mention this, and you don't have to comment on it, but General Fenton, the 18X program, my experience with it is people that we've tried to help get in. The Genesis program has pushed out, and I think the Genesis program would be more appropriately named the Exodus program. Most of the people that we would want in Special Forces are going to have a career in athletics. That means they're going to have an injury somewhere along the way, and yet the Genesis program seeks through every line of their medical history, and if they find any little thing, they force them out. So some way, somehow, we've got to find the balance between getting the right people in the 18X program and getting them around the Genesis program. With that said, the President, and I believe rightfully so, designated the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And he has directed our military forces to support securing our southern border. My question gets to your authorities and operations and how they have shifted to address this foreign terrorist threat from the cartels.
I can just start from the general authority.
Sure. Okay, that's
As a designation of FTO, that does not grant us any new authorities, but it definitely unlocks our ability to work better with our whole of government approach. You think of terms of counter-threat finance and how we can better, more efficiently pass off those target packets, if you will, to law enforcement. But at the end of the day, it helps us across the force reinforce that border security is national security. And we will be ready to defend and provide options to the president if he so chooses. But that's where we stand in terms of authorities. Want to add anything to that?
Yeah, Representative, I'd say double down on border security is national security, and I've mentioned in my opening statement, you know, our part to defend the homeland, if I look at it through the lens of counterterrorism first, really starts at our border and goes out across the globe. I would offer a double down that, you know, we've got no new authorities or directions, as the Secretary Jenkins mentioned. And then, but priority and focus certainly has changed. And I think in that effort, you've seen an uplift of SOCOM teammates to SOC North, Special Operations Command North, working with General Guillou and NORTHCOM in order to put together plans, assessments, and various other documents and opportunities that are required by the SecDef and by the department.
Well, the 2% of the defense budget and how much you're called on has been addressed a lot, so I'll skip over that other than say this. I think you'll see the members of this subcommittee working to make sure that that is addressed, and I do think that the new secretary will look favorably upon that. And so you talked a little bit about intelligence, and you've talked a little bit about drones and how drone warfare in Ukraine has changed really the face of war. How are you working with the outside industry to develop how we're going to protect ourselves from drones?
I can just say, just briefly, then talk to the details of, just to reassure or validate what you said, sir. I hosted a partner leader in my office a few weeks ago that's over there, and he reinforced that if you think you're at the cutting edge of battle and you haven't been to Ukraine, then you're wrong. And so we are actively taking the lessons that we learned there that require us to innovate daily, if not hourly, to adapt and build solutions on the spot that can be employed the next day instead of weeks and months down the road. We are definitely taking those lessons and applying them to Indo-PACOM and elsewhere. But in terms of, do you want to talk to the details of that? Thank you.
Representative, I think the heart of your question, when we look at Ukraine, I think we come away with what I'd call a strategic lesson, symmetry versus asymmetry. When I think about symmetry, that's the things that all nations have that are military fighting nations for their worst day: artillery, aircraft carriers, bombers, fighters, and they need it. Asymmetry, I think, is where, in this conflict, it's showing itself as 10x, 100x helpful to a cost imposition. And I think when we look at that, certainly through the lens of Special Operations Command, and put it out figuratively in a ledger, symmetry versus asymmetry, our sense is the asymmetry side of the house is not where we need to be. In many ways, it's probably missing. Drones of any kind, AI, autonomy, additive manufacturing. To your point, that is now the purview in many of those of the commercial and the private sector. We are absolutely involved with them in many, many different ways. Personally going out and meeting them, listening to the things they're seeing, providing some of our observations and lesson learned from Ukraine so that those things can be blended. We have tech pods, 2 or 3 folks that are in New York, Boston corridor, Austin, Texas, Silicon Valley, and we have all kind of ways for folks to come see us at SOCOM to talk to us about that, because we know that we've got to get busy and changing that ledger. We got to start filling that thing in with asymmetric anything. Hundreds of thousands of air uncrewed systems, maritime surface, subsurface, and I would just offer as I end this, that also takes money. And I think as we think modernization, that's one of the things that we're really talking about here. We're transferring risk into modernization and deterrence, and that risk, in my mind, is winning in the future. I think that's the challenge right now, and that will be part of winning, those uncrewed systems and AI and certainly autonomy.
Well, I'm glad the leash is off, and I hope that you get some money to get the equipment that you need. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Cisneros, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank our witnesses for being here today. As a former USD of PNR, I feel like I have to defend Genesis in the sense of what it does and the fact that it does give a picture of looking at the whole medical thing, but it is the services, not Genesis, that decides what is acceptable medically and what is not. But with that, being the former USD PNR, readiness was part of my portfolio, and training fell under that. So my first question, General Fenton, is going to be about training. And there was a GAO report that came out that said most training accidents are a result of human error, and concerningly, SOCOM lacks the funding to fully implement the training oversight program. So does SOCOM have any plan to conduct any analysis of negative safety trends or reevaluate training assessment programs, since it was reported that 80% of non-combat incidents come from training?
Representative, I'll start by saying first, any accident in training or worse yet, a death is absolutely not what we're all about. We are about rigorous, arduous training so that if in the event some of our teammates go into combat, that combat is easier than the training they've seen and the training we will do over and over again. I would take a little bit of umbrage or maybe even dispute with the fact that we don't do continual assessments of the safety at our various training courses. We do. We have a lot of training courses, assessment selection for our Army teammates, Air Force teammates, Marine teammates, Navy teammates, and those are looked at consistently, usually by what I would call an outer cordon of medical, safety, very experienced civilian personnel to continue to address that. That's our sacred obligation to the moms and dads that send us their sons and daughters for these kind of standards-based training, and we do that. So I think we're always in that motion. We continually strive to have the very hardest training we can while protecting the teammates that are certainly the national treasure sent to us by this nation.
Do you have the funding that you need in order to implement the training oversight programs and ensuring that the safety of the training is at max capacity there?
Representative, first I'll start. No. I talk about it in terms of modernization, and I think as I laid out in the opening statement, and we'll continue to come back to, training and training exercises along with modernizing authorities, modernizing technology. And when I talk about people, certainly I start with humans more important than hardware, long-held Special Operations Command truth, and education for uncertainty is part of modernization, and that's our humans. We absolutely need more money to make sure we're doing that and keeping up, especially as we make our training exercises, not our assessment selection processes, more complex, more complicated, so that we emulate what we're actually seeing on the environment now. Integrated air and missile defense. It's no longer just about OPSEC and distance. Now it's almost peer adversary systems everywhere. So I think absolutely, Representative.
No, well, thank you, and I understand. I mean, the training, like you said, the job and the missions that your service members go out and have to do, they need to train at optimum levels. So, but we need to make sure, and I think, I don't want to speak for the committee, but I will do what I can to ensure that you have the funding, to ensure that you have the safety standards that you need to ensure that it's safe.
Thank you, Representative.
Mr. Jenkins, just one question for you here, sir. You know, Congress created like the Special Operation Forces there to kind of almost make it like another service, but yet it's not really another service because, you know, you're not you're not in the acting role as a service chief. You're really kind of, I think, at an assistant secretary level there, right? So do you feel that the fact that they've kind of taken this and kind of put it in there and started this off there away from the services, that has kind of had an effect on the funding as to maybe why the services may not be funding this, or it's not getting funded at the level because you're not at an equal level, and yet the services don't have control over this anymore, so they're not putting in the assets that they used to?
Perhaps you've landed on some key points there, and we are grateful to Congress that SOLIC exists so that we do have those service-like capabilities. I do wear two hats where I am a service-like advisor to the SecDef, but I'm also a policy advisor. So it's a unique ASD ship, as you said. And so yes, we are constantly keeping our elbow sharp, making sure that we're at the correct tables with our service counterparts, and that as they ponder cuts, we can defend our own equities and make sure that they understand a cut here in the Army affects Army SOF down here, or a cut in the Navy affects Naval Special Warfare as well. So we certainly are grateful for Congress, the reinforcement that we receive.
All right, I yield back. I'm out of time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Luttrell, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for coming this morning, and for everybody in here in uniform and veterans, thank you for your service. General, preservation of the force is one of the things that I really focus in on as a member of Congress. And it's not, if you kind of roll the tape back, it's not something necessarily the shooters necessarily concentrate on. I think it's more of the force that needs to apply that kind of those spaces to the special operations community. And we have subject matter experts in the special forces community. We have dietitians, nutritionists, we have exercise scientists, we have a myriad of professionals that outline everything for our operators. But yet, when this information is provided to those operators, they have to go out and buy those supplements and those nutrients and everything for that sustainment and that sustainment process. With their own money, and I wholeheartly now disagree with that. I think that should be something that is provided by the community. I'd like to get your thoughts on that and see and get your stance, because it's downstream that I'm also worried about. Once the operators, they exit the military and they start the next chapter in their life, we want to make sure that they have the ability to move forward and they don't end up bald, broken with beards and.
Just say my name.
I had it.
Sir, I
I
can't
want that
look
on
in
the record.
I don't want to look in that direction.
Yeah, okay. But you know where I'm kind of going. It's
Yes, sir. Sir, thank you. I'll start with, I do want to thank this Congress and many who came before, those who come after, for the POTUS program. That's huge inside of an organization that says people as our number one priority because they are a competitive and comparative advantage, and in plain language, they're the weapon system. And I think when you think about it that way, we look at it through the lens of human performance, right? Maybe what standards would be elsewhere for just wellness. And I think when we go to human performance, you're alumni representative of what we do. It's a science-based approach to how we work out, which is very different than maybe 20, 30 years ago. Nutrition, absolutely, as you said, we know that's a key part. Sleep, it's everything. And we're blessed that that's part of our ecosystem. I think on the nutrition side, we do have the greatest nutritionists, dietitians. They come from the sports, the high-end athletic community, and they're taking it like tactical athletes that we are. And I think in that point, they talk to us quite a bit about upping our game through either third-party certified supplements in a way that they can account for. We absolutely want to protect our force, put anything in the force that is at long-term endangerment. But these are assessed and checked. I think supplements, third-party certified, and sports foods, things that help continue to up the performance. Unlike what maybe our adversaries are doing when they're experimenting on each other and doing things that we absolutely would not do to any of our teammates. So I absolutely think that's something we need to consider, and we'll certainly look for your support on that.
Thank you. And so, Mr. Jenkins, when you're chatting with the Secretary of Defense, if you would be so kind to bring this point to him that, hey, and he knows this, I've had this conversation with him, but I want this to resonate not only from the committee, but to the leadership and the DOD that this is an area that needs to be filled. This is a gap that we shouldn't have any longer.
Yeah, you bet. And as you know, our SecDef, our service members are his first priority. You see him doing PT with them. At every turn, he's engaging. So definitely that would be top of mind.
Okay. When it comes to preventive maintenance, and I like to focus in on traumatic brain injury, and I want to make sure that the forces are, we're gifted, we're innovative, creative thinkers, and we adapt very well. I want to make sure that we're concentrating on things that we can carry with us on the battlefield for preventive maintenance, but post-blast, medical procedures, whether or not we're talking about blast packs, or I don't want that to kind of get back on its heels and stall out any. So I know that you and I have had this conversation quite a bit, but I need you to hear me say this, and you can respond to that if you like.
I want to give you a commitment right back. I appreciate you saying I want to double down. I would just pull a thread from the last conversation. I think some of these third-party supplements, and I probably don't know them by name, also have efficacy against TBI and other things that our nutritionists have looked at. So I think there's a thread to be pulled in there. I double down on my commitment to you. We will not back up on either the TBI side, which when we talk about it as acute brain injury, or even the repeat exposure to blast, which is a chronic piece that I hope many of you got to see me talk about on 60 Minutes and reinforce SOCOM's commitment to that. So you have my commitment to both of those, Representative.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, General Fenton, Mr. Jenkins, for being here. First, I just want to thank you for your great comments on the importance of addressing civilian harm. I know that there's some conversations in the administration about shutting down the Center of Excellence, and so I appreciate how forcefully you've advocated for the importance of addressing this issue. I also just wanted to make sure we get on the record. I know you said the foreign terrorist organization designation of the Mexican drug cartels does not give you any new authorizations. Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and are there any planning or preparations for military action occurring within Mexico?
Ma'am, I can't speak to active ongoing discussions, but it is our sacred obligation to make sure that we are prepared and ready to provide options for the president should he decide.
Okay, and given that the FTO designation does not give you additional authorities, is it your understanding that before any potential use of military force in Mexico, you would need to come back to Congress for explicit congressional authorization?
Ma'am, that would fall to our commander-in-chief and the engagement between the executive branch and Congress. So, yes, ma'am, I would think there would be discussion there.
Okay, excellent. General Fenton, I wanted to ask you about Africa. The record of SOF operations in Africa has been mixed, right? We've had some tactical successes, some evident strategic outcomes, such as stability, governance, and lasting reduction in extremist activity remain elusive. And we've seen in Somalia and the Sahel. So given these outcomes, how is SOCOM adjusting its approach to ensure that future engagements yield more sustainable results and avoid unintended consequences, such as inadvertently contributing to regional instability?
Representative, I'll start by saying that when I look at partnerships, wherever they may be, and certainly through the lens of SOCOM as a premier partner organization and the way that our components and our Theater Special Operations Command do it, I probably take a bit of a long-term view, maybe all the way back to the 1950s when Special Forces and then our MARSOC, AVSOC, NSW teams all started. So I think the record is mostly on the upside in terms of partnership across the globe. I'd probably say the same thing in Africa, and I think that's attributable to when there are challenges. I think we're an incredibly fast-learning organization. What we do to address them in terms of maybe it's how we vet differently, if we're talking about certain type of forces. It could be about authorities we need modernized so that we can move faster and then meet the partner nation's demand. I think all of those really go towards, at some point, we have a common interest. We want to go from some level of burden sharing to burden owning by that nation, and at some point them leading in that burden. And I think to do that, we're always going to learn lessons, but I can commit to you that we're always bringing them back in a virtuous cycle to our force and then inserting them in an institutionalized way and then doing it all over again.
That's really helpful. What do you think the lessons are then from some of the sort of strategic failures we've had in the Sahel?
So I don't know that SOF has had strategic failures, just to be on the record myself. I think there's certainly strategic lessons to be learned. I think the first one, if I could give, is we need to do more information operations. And this is not only in SOCOM, it's probably the Department of Defense, it's probably across the interagency. That information operation void, in many ways, I think, allowed adversaries to get in there and mistruths, untruths, falsities, put a different narrative based on their view of the world, what they wanted, and mostly the great work we've done for years. So I think information operations is number one. Silence is consent. If we're not informing and we're not leveraging that as a traditional activity, I think we're ceding space. Probably the second one is an opportunity to really understand the other partners there beside just that nation. So partners from across the globe and what are their agendas. And I think we get better at each time. Those would be the two that I'd put against the backdrop of Africa.
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins, anything you wanted to add about SOF operations in Africa?
We want to make sure that there are three primary lines of effort that we're focusing on: defend the homeland, deter China, and make sure that we shift burdens to our allies and partners. So anything that affects those three lines of effort, if we see threats emanating from West Africa or otherwise, we would need to take every opportunity we can to mitigate that. Well, thank you, though.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Against my better judgment, Mr. Van Orden, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed that my colleague from Texas abandoned his post, knowing that I have the microphone next. I just want to emphasize something, Mr. Jenkins, that you mentioned. And we've had this discussion, Mr. Cisneros brought it up. The Army Special Forces Green Berets are named after a hat, and the SEALs are named after how we go to work, right? Sea, air, and land. Those are the methods of infiltration for us to accomplish a mission. And when general purpose forces cut these platforms, we simply can't go to work. And it would be interesting to know, what is your coordination process with general purpose forces when they're speaking about cutting these platforms? I mean, is there a formalized process, sir?
There are different, and thank you for calling that out, because that is very much right in our bailiwick where we need to defend our equities. There are different processes, DMAGs, RMAGs, where we are able to sit with our services, with other representatives from Comptroller and the Deputy's office, where proposals can be put forward and we can battle back, we can defend or help.
In the spirit of bipartisanship, bring up Mr. Cisneros' point. When you sit at the table, I mean, are you at the kid table at Thanksgiving, or are you like sitting with everybody and you're pulling your weight? Meaning, does your assessment have value in these scenarios when we're speaking about cutting, multi-billion-dollar, multi-year platforms?
We certainly have to, it's a constant struggle to make sure that our elbows stay sharp.
Okay.
But we are for example, just last week, I was sitting 2 chairs down from the deputy briefing our budget, our soft budget.
Okay.
And had the full room to our attention and support. So but to your point, it's a constant struggle. It's a different culture to think of SOF.
Oh, I know.
As a service. So that's why we appreciate Congress's support so that we are there.
Very well, thank you. And I'm sorry, I'm remiss for not recognizing the Master Chief and CSM here. Thanks for coming here, boys. It's good to see you. Less than 2% of the DoD budget is spent on SOF operations, correct? Everyone here, I think everyone, at least over here, has done Joint Combined Exercise for training. Sometimes we would call that training tomorrow's enemies today, and we have a proven track record of training people that we should not. Everything from the School of Americas in the 70s, and we trained the Taliban, armed them, equipped them, did all this stuff. We've created our own enemies, and so I'm wondering what percentage of the SOF budget is used for the JSET programs?
Boy, I don't know that specific number off the top of my head, but we can get back to you on
I would
that.
appreciate that tremendously. And then, along with that, so I have 2 tasks for you, 2 bits of homework, because you're not going to know the answer to this one either. That's not I'm not impugning your knowledge. I'm just saying this is kind of a detailed question. So, I'd like to know what percentage of the soft budget is used for JSETs. I also would like to know what percentage of the soft budget is used for the soft skills that are on Smoke Bomb Hill when we're talking about nation-building stuff. I understand you're going to cut some of your PSYOPs, guys. I agree with that completely. So if you could get it, on a piece of paper and tell us how much of our budget soft budget is being expended for the soft skills for nation-building, which we have done horribly across the world since Vietnam, honestly, and then what percentage specifically for JSETs? That would be awesome.
Will do. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. General Fenton, you understand that your component commanders start with the operational and O&M deficit every year, right?
I do, sir.
And so our guys are filling out UFR's unfunded requests on the regular just to be able to do their job.
Yep.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so here's what I'd like from you, sir. What I would like is, by component commander, what is the delta between what they're given every year and then the total of the UFRs on average, let's say a 5-year average, so that we, under this chairman's leadership, can hopefully plus up all the O&M budgets for our Special Operations Forces component commands.
Will do.
Give us real
Yes,
numbers.
you'll get real numbers, and Representative, if I might, so taken for action. Just on JSETs, I think on one side of the coin.
Yeah.
You know those also, there's many of our teammates, and not building nations, but those JSETs go against building high-end Tier 1 forces in a lot of
I
those
know.
countries that have stayed with
General
us for
Fenton, I'm
quite
the
some time.
longest-serving enlisted member of the United States military to ever be elected to Congress, and I also have the most years as a Special Operations Forces operative of any member of Congress in the history of the country. I know exactly what the hell I'm talking about, sir.
Roger that, Representative. I just add that many of those have then become security exporters. So I think if we pegged out a track record And I probably owe you that on where those have not just been nation building and somehow turned enemy, but have gone on to burden share, to burden own, to lead. And I think those are great stories, and I could talk about them in close that we ought not to forget about.
Thank you, General. I appreciate it. I yield back, sir.
Thanks, Representative.
Mr. Harrigan, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gentlemen, thanks for your testimony this morning. It's good to see both of you. General Fenton, I had the opportunity to spend the weekend down with General Braga at USASOC, and one of the things that we were talking about is that concerned me greatly is that the Green Berets are currently only producing about half the number that they are attriting each year through separation or retirement. What are we doing across the force? Specifically, that's a conversation about the Green Berets, but what are we doing across the force to make sure that we are actually replacing the number of special operators that we need?
Representative, I'll start by saying, first, we maintain the standards, right? And as I look at that, it's a challenge to get a production that in some days, I think if we're talking about SF enlisted, I think the requirement, General Braga probably talked, is about 825. When the force overall shrinks, that certainly shrinks down our input pipeline. And we're not going to adjust the standards. And we've had this conversation with the Secretary of Defense, who is all about lethality and warfighting. And I talked a bit about production rates. And I think at the very end, he said, maintain the standards. Roger that. Now, that isn't, don't do other work to try to get more in the pipeline. So I think with some level of force size reduction in the Army, we're talking about the Army here, that is a challenge of who wants to come in the pipeline. I will offer that we've tried to amp up our 18 X-ray program, which has been, and hopefully General Braga explained this to you, has been a really good program. It's about 3,000 folks who otherwise would not come into the Army, coming in off the street, going through infantry basic training, advanced training, and going through SFAS and the qualification course. And that 3,000, about 800 make it. So there's about 2,200, because we're enforcing the standard, that go back to the Army and serve in all kind of infantry units and do well. I do think there's a way we could amp that up, not only for the good of the Green Berets, which are part of the Joint Force, but also to bring in additional folks into the Army who would otherwise not even think about the Army unless they were coming towards special operations. So we get the same type of contracts with Ranger contracts. So I think there's a lot out there we're trying to do, but I think it all goes against, we will absolutely maintain the standards. We've had a recent audit, and that audit from the Department of Defense has come back that we're maintaining the standards. So I think we got some challenges.
Yeah, thanks, General, for that, and thank you for maintaining the standards. It's incredibly important. And I'd like to take the rest of my time and talk about drones. Mr. Jenkins, you talked about we need to be actively taking lessons and innovate from current conflicts. General, you talked about a supersonic acquisition and procurement process, that we're moving at a glacial pace, that we have an outdated system. And you also said that we're still at the talking stage with industry with respect to small drones.
Representative, no, we're well in discussion. I just wanted to make sure that folks understand. Maybe I misstated. We are in constant discussion with small and medium-sized companies that are in this business, and in many ways, we have some of their product already. So we're not just talking, we're actually doing.
Okay.
We need to do more.
I appreciate that, because I was a little concerned by the statement, thinking we need to move a little bit faster in SOF.
Roger, so we are, absolutely, but I'm never happy.
Absolutely.
I want to go speedier, so I won't be complacent, but we're well in the thick of this.
One of the lessons that I have picked up from Ukraine is that their production process of how they're manufacturing these FPV drones, which, as we have discovered, are responsible for 80% of the Russian casualties on the front lines. These are become a very, very important and transformational technology on the battlefield, is that they have somewhat of a hybrid mechanism of production, some outside industry, some internal. Are you open to the possibility that in order to actually create this capability at scale, that part of that effort may actually need to be done organically within the force, given all the frustrations and constraints that we have with our defense industrial base and our acquisition process at this time?
I absolutely am, Representative. I think we're already doing it throughout all the SOF. We've got incredible folks who come in who not only want to shoot, move, communicate, do combatives, get after what I call the soft basics that are the baseline, They're all into putting this stuff together and getting it out in a homemade way and doing them in the hundreds. I think our challenge is, at some point, to scale that, there's probably a private sector piece that's got to come in. But I think in many ways, we're doing that. We need to be able to scale that, and we want to scale more.
Thank you.
If I could just double down, that costs money, too. That costs money, so, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we have a hard stop, so if you need to cut me off, that's fine. I was late. Thank you both for being here. Thank you for all the work you're doing and have done. I want to pick up on what you said, General Fenton, earlier about I/O and both the importance and opportunity, and frankly, really the high ROI we get on doing I/O versus the cost of a lot of other things we've talked about today. And specifically within that realm, I want to focus on MISO and Indo-PAC, MISO within the Indo-PACOM AOR. I'm pretty sure you guys are still sort of designated as the joint proponent for MISO across the joint force. As I've heard from various folks across the force, while there's a continued investment in this area, we're still seeing that across the different components and TSOCs. There's a pretty wide variety of capability and specifically tech tools and data that's available from TSOC to TSOC. Have you guys looked at standardizing tools across the force for MISO so that kind of COCOM and TSOC commanders can better plan and sort of know what they're going to get?
I can just talk policy real quick. Within SOLIC, we have the Information Operation Policy Office that sits in oversight of all the I/O MISO plans across all the combatant commands. So that's a tremendous tool to make sure that our messages are synced, that we're coordinating with our interagency partners as well, which in the past was not necessarily the case. We had I/O messages going across each other, and so synchronization is working at the policy level, but then down to the tactical level. Do you want to expound on that? Thank you.
I'll just hit the part of, we are trying to make that a balance, as you mentioned, because we want folks to continue to innovate. And then there's a balance between standardization. And I think we're always looking at that, a representative in the right way through soft size, so we don't suffocate in innovation, which is for the here and now, modernization for tomorrow. But I would offer that where I see standardization, because I don't have the modernization money, I'm unable to scale it, almost back to the previous discussion. So I think that's a challenge. If we find something we want to bring across all the theater special ops commands, that takes funds. And I think in that arena, those are many of the other things in modernization we're not able to do.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate that I think that's one of the smartest and frankly lowest dollar investments we could make that would provide huge leverage in terms of when you have identified those, come back to us so that we can figure out how to help you scale that across. I know just I only have 2 minutes, but I want to pick up also on what I've heard as I came in around this idea of sort of burden sharing and shifting the burden. I've heard that used a lot now in the last few months, but I don't really know what we're talking about there. Can you, either of you or both of you, with the time we have, expand on that? Frankly, I'm concerned about that, given I feel like that could mean we're backing away from critical partnerships that you all have and your forces have built through blood, sweat, and tears over many, many decades. Maybe I'm wrong. Can you help me understand that?
Yeah, I'll just start high, and then we'll go down to the weeds. Just from my own personal experience, for example, working in Colombia as part of Plan Colombia, working by, with, and through our partners there, foreign internal defense that's core to our mission. Building that partner nation capacity allows us as a nation to build partners that are fully...
No, not to interrupt you. I understand that. That's what I'm saying. I want to make sure we continue.
We're not backing away from partners. Okay. We're just making sure that those partners that have capability and capacity can now operate on their own a little bit more efficiently, and then we can have priorities.
And well, go ahead, General.
First, I'm happy to cover a really detailed one in the closed session, Representative, if you're there, and then I'll double down on Secretary Jenkins. We're not backing away. I think it's a key part of who SOCOM is. It's in our DNA to be a premier partner for us. Right now, almost 7,000 folks across 80 different countries, persistently present, and I think that's the way we do business.
Thank you. I commend that. I agree, and I just want to make sure that is the message that we are sending loud and clear, and I appreciate you saying that, and that ask that the others in the administration continue to reiterate that we're not backing away from those critical partnerships. And
Representative, I'd be derelict in my duties if I didn't say, and that cost of that is also going up.
Yep.
You know, the price to have somebody out there doing that, which I think is a global sensor, provides opportunities and advantages to COCOMs. The price of sustaining the humans when I come out of the Middle East has gone up exponentially. So those are risk trade-offs we make. Won't mean we're backing away from partners. Might mean the fiscal constraints plus the personnel piece put us in a place we can't do it.
Thank you, and yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. With this, we're just going to close the open session here. We're going to immediately reconvene in 2337 for the classified session. I just want to say before we leave, thank you, gentlemen, for your time today. I want to say thank you to everyone in the audience that is in uniform for your service. We all recognize that the sacrifice of you and your families in the value that we get from that, you protecting our country, and we want to just say thank you. So with that, we're adjourned.